So today is a special version of CEDA's Economists Corner. We're lucky to have with us the head of Deloitte Access Economics, Pradeep Phillip, to give us his perspective on the stimulus package announced today and how it compares to things that we've seen in the past and, quite frankly, whether it's going to work. Pradeep, thanks for joining us here at CEDA to talk about how you're seeing the fiscal stimulus package that was announced today. Obviously, really uncertain times at the moment, a very important announcement by the government, and really interested in your take on it. Let's start at the sort of high level, if you like. What are the key criteria that you would normally use to assess a package like this? And based on that, how are you seeing the package and its likely impact?
Pleasure to be with you here, Melinda. I think we need to start with a little bit of an understanding of what is the nature of the problem this response is solving for. Essentially, there are three things. First, we knew that through last year, there were some structural issues emerging in the Australian economy. We knew that productivity was pretty anemic. We knew that consumption and wages were holding the economy back. We knew that business investment was not as high as it should be for us. And we also knew that confidence was a weak spot in the Australian economy. And that's been compounded by two short, sharp crises. The first, the deadly summer that we've had with both bushfires and floods in close proximity. And second, the coronavirus. So there are three things that this package is solving for. So one, does it hit the problem on the head? And second, what does it do for the most fundamental thing that we're facing here, which is a problem of confidence? So the narrative around this is really important, and the package must instill confidence for individuals as they're battling coronavirus and the effects of bushfires where they've been affected, the businesses who are experiencing cash flow, and I think addressing the underlying structural issues of the economy.
So let me just pick up on one thing there. You talked about the narrative. The narrative has been very much about keeping business going and about jobs, keeping people in work, basically. A really strong focus that's been mentioned by the Prime Minister repeatedly, by the Treasurer. That too was a key issue when you look back at the potential implications for the global financial crisis. Now you were of course very closely involved with that, working for federal government at the time. How are you seeing this package compared to the package that was rolled out in the midst of the global financial crisis? Do you think there's anything missing this time? Do you think they've got it about right, and particularly through this lens of jobs and whether we can keep people in jobs?
So a couple of points there. On bushfires, the response has been improving. On coronavirus, first and foremost, a health response is required, and we saw about $2.5 billion announced yesterday around this. And that's really important because we need to make sure people are tested quickly and appropriately, and that we instill a sense of calm. The good thing is that, led by our chief health officers in each of the states and the federal government, they're really well versed in dealing with crises. And we have a pretty good health system by any measure. So people should have confidence on that front. On the package that's been announced today, it's different circumstances requiring a different response. At the time of the GFC, that was a financial sector problem that was transmitted really quickly into the real economy. And it required a response that went hard on consumption. You recall Dr. Ken Henry's prescription to the cabinet at the time: go early, go hard, go consumption. And that's what that response was. Here, slightly different. Here, as you point out, the short-term immediate requirement is to cushion businesses. Because the worst thing that can happen is when businesses shut and people lose their jobs. And whatever we do, we need to make sure that business can keep operating and that we can save as many jobs as we can during this period. By and large, about 2/3 of the announcement today is targeted at business. And that's appropriate. At the same time, there is some measures that put income back into people's pockets. Again, that'll be important. What's also going to be important is that the government retains flexibility to vary things as all of this unfolds.
Yeah. I think you make a really good point about the health response first and foremost, because I think, one of the things that we've seen in terms of people's reaction to it, and we've talked about the words, like panic and panic buying of toilet paper, things like that, is a confidence issue, and whether they're ahead of it, if you like. And so I think that health response is a really important one. Of course, it also provides money to the states.
Yes.
And support to the states, which will give them more fiscal flexibility than they might otherwise have had. Ultimately, though, really in terms of setting a floor for economic activity and jobs, the key issue is business going to respond the way that government thinks they will? Are consumers going to spend the money that has been provided to them? Because if they don't, we're really not far advanced. So what's your thinking on that?
Look, part of this goes to an assessment of whether people will rush out the door and spend the cheque that's been given to them. We recall last time the stories about people rushing out and buying the big flat screen TVs. Is that likely to happen? Well, if there are enough flat screen TVs, that'll be the question. And also, we need to overcome the fear that some groups in the community might have, which might see them take this money and just save it for a rainy day. And so part of the narrative of the government has got to be to encourage people to go about their normal day-to-day lives and spend in the economy as they would with the money that they've received. And for business, it's really important to get the narrative right about investing for the future. So dealing with the short-term cash flow crisis, which some of the measures in this package address, but importantly, flipping the mindset to one of investment, not one of what we would call a more defensive posture. And that's really important.
Yeah, I think one of the other points that's just worth making, we've been talking very much about what the government's response is here, but we've also seen in recent days businesses like the banks really step into this as well, recognising the potential implications on cash flow for business. And I think, and I hope, that when you see these two measures working together, so very clear focus on business keeping workers, that hopefully consumers will be listening to that part of it as well. Maybe being a little bit less worried about the outlooks for their own employment in the weeks and months ahead, and therefore maybe at the margin more inclined to spend the additional money that they've got.
Absolutely.
So I think you've got the banks looking to support business, you've got the government looking to support business. Hopefully in the community that gives people the confidence that it is more business as usual than not, even with a little bit of support, and that helps them in their own thinking and confidence around the decisions they're making.
Absolutely. And it's really important for us to use this time to reinforce some underlying principles about a good society. That we solve these things together. That we don't have to panic and resort to self-interest as the answer to what we're facing. And I think that's a really important message for the government, that with an orderly and clear pathway out of this, people can be assured that they don't have to deviate from their day-to-day as much as they think they might have to. So we don't have to run to the aisles and panic buy on toilet paper and things like that. This is not one of those times. So I think a really measured response from the government on fiscal policy, measured response that we've been seeing from the Reserve Bank on monetary policy, and overnight the Governor of the Reserve Bank was chairing a meeting of the Bank of International Settlements committee with other central bankers. So clearly, globally, there is some concerted action around this. This should give us a bit of hope and restore a bit of calm, and importantly restore some certainty into markets.
Well, Pradeep, I think that's a fantastic point on which to end our short conversation around today's fiscal stimulus package. Thanks so much for coming in to CEDA to give us your perspectives. And I look forward to trying to get you back in to talk about some of the longer term challenges that sit beneath this short term uncertainty. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.